Oh, that was great. We suddenly came in and then lost Ian. Ian, where have you gone? Okay, well, good evening and welcome to the Pompey Politics podcast. I'm sure Ian will be back shortly, but I seem to. At the moment, it's just me. We were going to look at what was happening on nationally and locally, and see where we're kind of going on. So while Ian tries to kind of find his way back into things, one of the key kind of local things that's happened over the last week or so. And apologies, we cancelled last week's show because I wasn't very well. Don't know if you can tell because my throat's a bit bad. There's lots of kind of flu-y things going around. Not sure whether it was COVID or not, but here I am. Let's kind of see when hopefully Ian will be back shortly, as I say. So yeah, one of the things that was announced last week was the confirmation of the candidates for the Paulsgrove by-election. That's happening on the 23rd of October, and that's been brought about by the resignation of one of the three Paulsgrove councillors, Brian Madrick, who's stepping down. And because it's more than 6 months away from the scheduled elections in May, that means that means that we have to have a by-election. So that is happening on October the 23rd. The candidates have now all been announced. Ian's just messaged me to let him know that his fantastic new internet connection has died, so he's just kind of sorting that out and coming in. But so we will be having an online hustings in the form that we quite usually do when we have local elections. So we'll have one for the Paulsgrove by-election. We'll have the hustings online on October the 19th, and that's going to be right here, available online, live on YouTube and Facebook, and we'll be having that on the 19th of October. So if you've got any questions that you want us to put to candidates, or any kind of rules are the questions that we're going to put to candidates, we have to put to all of the candidates. So you can't just direct a question at one particular one. It needs to be something that all of them, but of the 5 candidates that have been announced, so there's been candidates for the Greens, Lib Dems, Labour, Reform, and for the Conservative Party. We have the candidates from Reform, that's Joe Standen, from the Conservative Party, which is, I've forgotten his first name, it's Mr. Hall from the Conservative Party, and Sidney Phillips from Labour will be joining us for those. We haven't had an answer yet from the Lib Dems, but we've had a decline from the Greens. So do send us that if you want us to have a question. Either message that to us on Facebook, or you can email that to us at studio@pp. So pppodcast.uk, or if you scan in the top right hand corner, you'll see actually our website, and you can either leave us a voice message or you can send us some messages from there. So welcome back, Ian. I was just letting everyone know about the Paulsgrove by-election while you kicked your internet halfway across the room. How's it going?
This is marvelous, and no, the internet hadn't broken, so I don't know what occurred. I took a deep breath and launched into my usual warm welcome, and it all
You got
went
booted.
quiet.
I didn't do
Yeah, well,
anything, honest. It wasn't me.
no, yeah, having talked about how this episode was about talking points, not scoring points, I thought you'd thrown me out early.
Oh
So
yeah,
apologies, everyone.
yeah.
Yeah. No,
After that echo chamber, mate. That's the
I've read about you online and your woke nature and your echo chamber proliferation.
yeah.
Yeah, we hopefully we'll dive into some stuff, and we'll see which of us wins the woke hat of the week, which is we could have as a new feature.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've touched on Paulsgrove.
Yes.
Yeah, in I guess the biggest talking point, I heard you there listing the candidates who were there. I guess the probably the biggest news is the candidate that isn't there. So PIP opting not to field a candidate, as outgoing councillor Brian Madrick of PIP has thrown himself fully behind Joe Standen for reform.
Yeah, I mean, Pip had made announcements saying that they fully intended to stand, and they made an announcement. Forgive me, Pip, I'm probably going to get the date wrong. Sometime last week, to say that they'd in the end not been able to field a candidate. So, and they were also kind of reflecting on the fact that that Brian Madrick was very much respected, and they could see what Brian's thoughts were. And that's a debate point in itself, whether people feel that a sitting councillor should really. I mean, they don't democratically have a say in who replaces them. They're not naming their successor, but obviously they're quite within their rights to say, well, actually, I think this guy would be really good. And in that case, that's what Brian Madrick's done, and he's basically thrown his support behind Joe Standen.
Yeah, and I guess again, there was a lot of speculation, wasn't there, before the last general election as to whether George Madrick would stand as an independent for Portsmouth North, and in the end, he opted not to, and threw his support behind Penny Mordaunt. So, of the Conservatives. So it's kind of not unknown, but I guess it will ask some more fundamental questions about. We've mused about the future of PIP in a wider kind of context when Portsmouth is almost certainly going to be bigger and include Havant and Gosport and Fareham and Waterlooville. So yeah, no, just interesting that the history of PIP was very much about the right people for Portsmouth rather than no national parties. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
turbulent times, I guess. But nice to see that we've got 3 of the 5 candidates who've stepped forward to hust.
Indeed, and I'll just read through the list, because obviously I hadn't done them in properly before. So for the Greens, you've got Georgina Ayling. For the Conservatives, you've got Thomas Hall. For Labour, you've got Sidna Phillips. For the Liberal Democrats, you've got Michelle Simmons. And for Reform, as you say, you've got Joe Standen. So so you got 5 names on the ballot. And at least 3 of them will be taking part in the hustings. So we're looking forward to giving them an opportunity to speak to their electorate ahead of that all important by-election, which I guess is kind of a dry run for what happens in May next year.
Well, and I think there is a piece, isn't there? By-elections are always. We've spoken before on this podcast about the fact that local political activists are relatively few in number, and one of the biggest challenges when it comes to any election, either all 14 local wards or national, is that you've only got so many warm and willing bodies, and you're trying to cover the whole city. So, if any of you follow local political media, you'll see that most of the parties have been busier in Paulsgrove and Port Solent than they would have been traditionally. So yeah, we will see how it goes and how much national politics has a chance to bear. But I guess the other issue we were going to talk about locally is it was full council the week before last, but unfortunately you were struck down with a mixture of Ebola, dengue fever, and the King's Evil, so we're not able to broadcast last weekend. So I guess take us back to the full council, and what were the big ticket? There was only really one big ticket item, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was. So the full council on the 23rd of September. By the way, the one for October has been cancelled, so there wasn't enough on the order paper to be discussed. So they decided to nix it. But essentially, the full council on the 23rd was essentially, hey, the cabinet are going to decide about kind of what their letter or their submission is with regard to local government reorganisation, and kind of talking around that. So you'll be surprised that there weren't many people kind of really singing its praises. I've got a kind of couple of clips that I can play that will kind of show us what sorts of things people were saying. So let's should we hear a couple?
Yeah, let's. I think we might be able to guess, but let's listen.
Okay, so let's kind of see who we've got. So I'm going to go with let's go with a bit. Let's go. With
to change the subject from the Isle of Wight, I have a question about the numbers of councillors. First, the question really is that set in stone? Because it does seem to me that the being in a council of 99 people, you wouldn't get your maiden speech for 3 years. you certainly wouldn't be able to make effective work friendships with people in the chamber, which is essential across party as well as within parties. And you certainly wouldn't be able to make any substantial savings on the cost of democracy. I bear in mind that one of the requirements of the new unitaries is to engage their communities, and so it wouldn't result in a reduction in democracy. I think considering a smaller number, say, I don't know, I'm taking it off the top of my head, say 60 or whatever, but I would hope that we will have an opportunity to look at that.
Okay, so we've had to undertake a fairly arbitrary stab at what the number of councillors will be, because we don't know for sure until a local government ward boundary review is undertaken. Now, just being realistic, that's not going to happen before 2028, because that would have to happen before the elections in 2027 for the shadow authority. So it's very, very likely that we'll go probably on our current numbers, probably 42, because it's all about the electorate ratio to members, to the number of councillors. But we did go, so the local government, so the Boundary Commission issued some guidance on this and said for new local authorities subject to LGR, given it's a population of, on average, 500,000 people, it can go between 35 and 99. I'm not quite sure how a council of 500,000 people and 35 councillors would work. So that is the reduction. Not that the reduction in the allowances that 70 councillors get is going to change the world in terms of local government funding, but it just seemed a bit of a strange thing to do.
Chief Executive, do you agree, or can you explain to us that how Councillor Smythe has just literally in a nutshell described how representation and democracy will be diminished and decision making will be more remote by this massive new council?
Well, I think it's difficult to really explain that, because I think when I stood up earlier to present the report, I said there was an irony in the very sentence about having more democracy but reducing members by approximately 70 members. It's underpinned by this neighbourhood approach, about how councillors will engage with their neighbours. I know that's what you do on a day-in, day-out basis, but there is about new structures to come in place, such as forums, neighbourhood committees, etc., which is the government is seeking as part of the white paper and the devolution bill to try and get some of those initiatives going forward.
Follow or subscribe for more.
To change the subject from the Isle of Wight, I have a question about the numbers of councillors.
Sorry.
Make it stop.
Yeah, I'll make that stop. There was another one I was going to play, but I'll play that in a second. Let's talk around that one first.
So that started off with Linda Smythe.
Yes.
I didn't recognise the voice of the lady who followed Linda.
I'm not sure of the lady, but it's an officer on the council, if not actually
Yeah.
the CEO. So it's not an elected official.
And then who chipped in? The chap.
So we had something from Lee Hunt.
Ah, splendid. No, I guess this is one of the interesting things, isn't it? About we'll just in case anyone has been living under a stone. The thought is, or almost all proposals see the new Greater Portsmouth Council as being Portsmouth, Gosport, Fareham, Havant and Waterlooville, Ink, Hayling Island, Emsworth and all those. So basically it's, and there's another version which has it slightly bigger going sort of out towards Horndean and Clanfield, but everyone kind of accepts that those areas will be covered. So at the moment, I think that runs at about 170 councillors. We've got sort of 42 in Portsmouth, and then there's kind of 30 odd everywhere else. So, you know, as part of this, this is where, you know, you kind of worry that you know, nothing should ever be left to governments to organise, because it's talking about greater representation, more democracy, blah blah blah, and you heard things there about neighbourhood forums, and well, at the moment, you get your local councillor for the low price of 10 grand a year, which in real terms, it is, if we were paying somebody to do that role, you get them for about 10 hours a week, 12 hours a week, maybe at minimum wage. So to drive democracy forward, we're not going to have as many councillors, because you're not going to have a council of 170 but we're going to set up neighbourhood forums. Oh God, who's going to set up the neighbourhood forums?
That,
Council officials. Will they be working on minimum wage at just 10 hours a week? No. All right. Okay. Ah, shambles.
it, and I think, well, I don't know. I'm kind of almost dumbstruck. I think there's a lot of things kind of going on, but a lot of things that also are so much still up in the air.
Yes.
What viewers won't know is that we'd hoped to ask Steve Pitt, leader of Portsmouth City Council, back on, and indeed he was. He'd expressed that he might have actually been available last Sunday, but unfortunately, due to me deciding to pick up whatever the hell I'd picked it up from licking a mouse at something, the type on a desk, by the way, not the fairy ones with the tail. That unfortunately we couldn't do that, so we'll have to kind of reschedule that and pick his brains at a later date when there's some more news on it. But essentially, yeah, there's a lot of hurry up and wait in this, and there's a lot of really big things that are still so far up in the air. But personally, I just don't yet see where any of these savings are likely to actually come from, and it just seems like it seems a lot. It seems to be in a race to get to a poorly defined goal when none of the steps between it seem to have been particularly well defined, and none of the people involved in those steps seem to be meaningfully consulted, and none of the public that it affects have been asked whether they actually bloody want it. Probably because they'd have said no, and the government don't want that.
Well, and there's a bit of the consultation.
Sorry, was that a bit cynical? Sorry.
Well, a little bit cynical, but I think there's also this piece of and we've touched on it before. The noble goals of devolution and local government reorganisation, if you look at them at a very high level, there is almost certainly a beautiful PowerPoint presentation somewhere with all kinds of arrows and, little rhombuses and things which come in and have these beautiful words on there about, bringing power to the people, and it'll all be great.
Yeah, all of those things are
Until,
great and lofty aims, but it's just the
well,
execution
until
side.
somebody says, well, how are you going to do that, mate? And why are you going to do it?
Yeah.
So I think we know the what, but I still think the majority of people don't really know the why, and no one at all understands the how, because again, and forgive me, unnamed council officer, for not knowing your name, but the expectation was that ward boundaries were going to change in 2028. So 2026 is the last election of Portsmouth City Council. 2027 is the election of the shadow council, which I think sounds like
a lot more
they've got.
mysterious.
If they don't meet in a hollowed out Portsdown Hill, I'm going to be absolutely furious.
Oh, surely they should meet in some sort of brutalist architecture bunker that makes it look either like a Jerry Anderson film or an early Bond movie.
Well, I've gone for the hollowed out mountain. I've gone for the full.
Okay, so they're going to meet in like the tunnels in the hill or something. Okay.
Yeah, no, I've gone for the full Despicable Me look on this one.
Okay.
And yeah, I kind of, and then 2028 we'll have the elections for the proper council, in quotes, and then 2029 we'll have a general election and throw everything all up in the air again.
Yeah, I think there is that. I think effectively the organisation is going to get stood up in an incomplete form or in some sort of bastardized hybrid of the current system, and then will eventually decide actually what it define itself, and then have elections in order to enact that. And maybe to a degree that's unavoidable because of the amount of change that's kind of being proposed, but it just seems that someone's taken a problem, started at the top, decided on what the solution is, without kind of identifying involving any of the stakeholders or involving any kind of the things that are going to happen. So I don't know. Again, I might be being a bit cynical. We hear more as time goes on, and different leaders of different councils have expressed a different kind of view about what good looks like. But really, to a degree, they've all made their submissions now to the government as to, well, this is what we want. What Portsmouth City Council has said, well, actually, we really don't want to be involved in this. But if we have to, we'll go with this idea. And essentially, kind of that's what they've said.
So for those of you,
the Isle of Wight have effectively said, well, as long as you leave us alone, we'll be okay, because the Isle of Wight is an island. It's on its own, and it's a unique kind of situation. Gosport seems to have just folded its arm and sulked, and Hampshire County Council seems to have kind of said, well, we think this is a great idea.
yeah, I mean, Hampshire are probably the most vocal. I don't see a lot from Southampton, making commentary or kind of expressing an opinion one way or the other. So effectively now, the two bids, for want of how it should be reorganised, one supported by Hampshire and East Hampshire, and the other supported by everybody else other than Gosport, they've now headed off towards government for them to look at. I think Hampshire have offered 2 options. The other team have offered 1, and I think it will now be in the hands of government to call one way or the other. But despite rigorous searches of the interweb, we can't find out when that decision's going to be made. The only suggestion is autumn 2026. So having raced about with their collective bottoms on fire and probably had to pay Ernst & Young, KPMG, other consultancy firms are available, a shed ton of money to get that submission done in a year. It feels like the government is now, well, thank you for charging about and getting that done. We'll come back to you in.
Are you still away from your desk at the moment, or is your picture frozen while you're away from your desk?
No, I am here. I believe I am definitely here.
Because I can still hear you, but all I can see at the moment is an empty chair.
Oh, how very strange. Well,
Has your
I'm
computer
definitely
gone to sleep again and kind of?
no. It's talking to me. And yeah, for those who are interested, I had to go and let my guide dog in. But no, I am sat back in my chair, staring at my camera, and doing whatever I do. So forgive me if have I got news for you where they replaced one of the presenters with a tub of lard? This is rather a worrying development. So again, I will continue talking, but what I will do in a comedy fashion is unplug my camera and plug it back in again to see if that
Okay.
has any effect at all. So,
Okay.
well, yes, apart from camera-based tomfoolery, yeah, the general mood of the meeting was, I don't want to do this, Mrs. Smith. Why are you making me do this?
Well, shall we? While you do that, shall I play? Because I've got a clip from Steve. Shall we quickly play that and move on?
Yeah, let's see what Steve's got to say.
Okay. So let me get back to that, and we can play that, and all like magic. Once that's sorted out, we can then.
This government is not listening. I do want to talk about the budget gap because I get Chris's answers as a finance officer. I'm going to be less diplomatic. If anybody seriously believes that Hampshire County Council is suddenly going to solve a £136 million problem this year, and then the difference between that and 281 million over the next couple of years before we get to 2028, and that the other money, the difference between 323 million, Chris, not 73, and the 281 million of the county, you said it wrong 4 times in your thing, but as you're an officer, you're allowed. The difference between those 2 figures are a very significant amount of money from across the districts, boroughs and the other unitaries. If anybody seriously thinks that remotely close to all of that is going to get fixed in a couple of years, it is not. It is just not. We've taken £110 million worth of savings plus this year's still to come already. So it is not possible for Portsmouth to carry the lion's share of the savings that will be expected from this new unitary authority that we will find ourselves in. And that's massively unfair on the people who live in Fareham, Gosport and Havant. because the discretionary spend that they still have available is inevitably going to get absolutely clobbered as we try and come up with a balanced budget. It's an inevitability. So it takes us back to the core of the issue. This government is not listening. This government knew coming in, they knew, because they had a white paper prepared by the Local Government Association, which they spoke very warmly about before the election, and then completely forgot all about it, that there's an £8 billion problem in local government just to retain services at their current level by 2028-29. And we have not seen a fraction of that £8 billion yet put back into local government. So whether we stay on our own or whether we're part of a bigger council will largely determine how quickly we end up in an exceptionally difficult position, along with councils all across this country. So this is a massive distraction from the core of the problem, which is where is the funding to provide the services that the people in this country need and demand and rely on for their day-to-day existence, particularly around adults and children's social care, particularly around SEN need. These are vital services to millions of people. The funding isn't there. This is the sideshow to distract from that problem. And it is a huge problem.
Follow or subscribe for more.
So that was Council Leader Steve Pitt, a clip of basically his view on the situation, but essentially kind of not really getting far from government. Ian, I've still got the same frozen.
You have, I'm afraid, and all of the green lights are on, and I have restarted the camera, but unfortunately, those who wish to see my warm and fuzzy countenance are going to have to make do with the empty chair and imagine me. I'm afraid, because we are not able to fix it from this end. So, yeah, I think Steve makes. I mean, Steve always makes good points. When he started with where is the I wondered where he was going with it, but he went funding instead, where I thought he was going to say something about the effing money coming from. Yeah, it is the challenge, isn't it? And I absolutely get the frustration of anybody who's been a councillor in Portsmouth for many years. You know, we can go all Keir Starmer and go 14 years of Tory neglect, but it's been the same 14 years in Southampton, Hampshire, and Portsmouth. And without wishing to sound too partisan, Portsmouth has taken the tough decisions it needed to run a balanced budget, to invest wisely, to do all of those good things, and are not running a deficit. And it does just feel, a bit of a biblical parallel about the prodigal son. It's the councils that have mismanaged and wasted their money are now, we're being forced into a kind of working relationship with them. And can you bail me out? I spent all my money on beer, chips, and good living. Any chance I can have some of yours? Yeah, it is. It is always been the fear from Portsmouth City Council, but I think the point Steve makes about the exponential rising of costs. Shall we be really cynical? Is LGR just, as Steve suggests, Labour government's way of muddying the waters?
I've now lost your audio after muddying the waters. Are you
Oh,
still there?
no,
Or
I'm
did
still
you
there. I was pausing
okay.
for you to answer my warmly worded question. I guess it's because you can't see my eyebrow raise at that
No,
point.
I can't. And it's really freaking me out.
Sorry.
Can I kind of? I'm going to try and boot you off of the call into the green room, and then try and take you back and see whether that makes any
You
difference.
can do exactly that.
Okay, so 1 second. Okay, I don't know if you can you still hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. I don't know whether I have reappeared.
You've not, no. In fact, if anything, it's worse, because now I've lost your image as well.
Ah.
Hang on. Yeah, I don't know what the hell.
I mean, The only option I can give you is I can jump out and then try and jump back in. Should we
Okay.
try that?
Should we try that? And I shall talk about subscriptions and shit while you sort that
Perfect.
out.
I'll be back.
Okay. Okay, so apologies everyone. Don't quite know what's going on there. Things should have been better. Ian got a better, more improved internet this week. So the opposite seems to be happening so far. But we shall struggle on. It's not like I can pull my hair out, as you can quite clearly see. I haven't got much left. So just remember, please, you can scan the QR code in the top right hand corner of your screen, and you can or you can email us studio@pppodcast.uk, or you can message us on all of the Facebook platforms. If you go to our website, you can also sign up for our regular email newsletter. And indeed, we actually set up a WhatsApp group that we're just starting to use, just trying to see whether people want to engage us with us that way. You can leave us voicemails on the usual social media platforms, or indeed, there's actually a tool for you to do it actually through the website. So do please kind of just give us all those likes, subscribes, and comments, etc. It doesn't quite feed us, but it does make us at least feel that someone's listening. Let me try and see if I'm getting anywhere with it. Ian, you're back.
I'm here.
Okay.
Can you see me?
I can see you. I can hear you.
Oh, this is absolutely marvellous. So,
yes.
I guess just to close out LGR, it does appear to be runabout, panic, stop. Far too many questions still to answer, and I guess, we will have to. I guess the next big milestone then appears to be next May, when everyone is good to go, and we'll start voting. I think we've established the Lib Dems have named their person. Obviously, Donna broke ranks early for the Conservatives, and I think the Greens this week gave out their nominated person, but we still haven't heard. We still haven't heard who Labour and Reform are going to put up.
That's right. I haven't seen an announcement about Labour. People in Labour, if you want to basically correct us for being utterly wrong, because that happens quite often. So please do correct us. But yes, the Green candidate is Anna Collar of the New Forest. So they've been selected on October 1st. So we've got Martin Todd from the Lib Dems. We've got Donna Jones. I don't know if that name rings a bell to anyone. I don't know. For the Conservatives, as you say, still not sure about Reform and not sure about Labour, but keep your eyes peeled. The conversations that I was having online with Reform people was that they're not having to vote for their candidates through the members, but they didn't seem to feel that they were in a particular rush to kind of get someone into place. So who knows? Watch this space. Let's kind of see what happens here. And we'll go from there. So let's move on from all matters LGR. What were we going to talk about? Was that everything local, or were we going to move to national now? What are we going to do?
I think we should move to national, and under things of being unsure, and a little bit kind of, it's nice when we can all get behind something, and something can unite the country. And where did the national digital ID cards spring from? Because I remember Mr. Tony Blair back in the day, he was very keen on it. And at the time, I worked briefly for a plastic card manufacturer who were turning cartwheels at the prospect of having 50 odd million cards to produce. It was looking like that was going to be a very lucrative deal, but that all went away. But suddenly, digital ID cards are back on the. Well, are they a headline? I think they probably are, aren't they? They seem to have generated a lot of excitement from all corners of the political spectrum.
They certainly have, and they've certainly it's interesting to see how. I mean, the Lib Dems have come out against it. I can't remember whether have the Conservatives said that they were for it. I think they have, haven't they?
Oh, I
Have they?
don't
What have
think
they
they
said?
have.
Mhm.
I think they have they're not keen.
They're not
Um,
keen.
Not keen, and
Okay.
I think one of the more prominent Conservative figures
I
can't
mean,
make
can you
me
have
carry one.
prominent if there's like only 12
I
of them
will
now? I
I
don't
will
know.
no Jesus. A Lib Dem stood there throwing stones about prominence and public recognition. Christ, I should be wearing a wetsuit. Right, I'm going to let that pass.
Okay.
But Uncle Boris has come in and said he will never carry one, and I think the basically, if you're a libertarian, it's a no. If you're on the right, it's a no. If you're on the left, it's the big state, big brother spying on you. I can't find anyone who's keen, Simon.
Well, the
And
government seem to be terribly keen.
well,
I'm just.
I'm not sure that they are. But this is another one of
Well,
those
they tell us they're
curveballs.
keen.
Well, they do, don't they? But they were keen on ripping the winter fuel allowance out of the poor, cold, bony hands of pensioners, to which they became quite unkeen after everyone told them it was a ridiculous and stupid idea, and why the hell did you go down that route? And then they thought, well, tell you what we'll do. We could do with saving a few quid. The disabled are always on the take, aren't they? Let's rip it out of their hands. And everyone said, would you stop? And so now they've gone, well, those two weren't very popular. We better find something even more unpopular. Let's go for digital ID cards, see whether that gets us any more votes.
Wow,
I,
it's like sitting next to Laura Koonsberg. I can't believe it. So
well, apart from I walk less heavily. But no, I seriously, Simon, I guess the thing for me is, and again, a little bit of an echo back to LGR. I know what they're saying, but it's that why and how and what's the benefit? Because, again, as everything at the moment seems to have to be linked back to people coming across the channel on small boats, it'll be a protection against working illegally in the UK. Well, I I employed somebody recently, and I spoke to a number of candidates, and two of those candidates were foreign nationals, and I had to look into what I needed to do
mm,
to allow if they had been successful.
yeah.
And effectively, they they would present to me, they would present their bona fides, they would give me a code that I would have to go into the government gateway account, and that code would prove to me that that person had the legal right to remain and work in the UK. It was a pretty thorough process.
Mm,
Now, had I have been taking that person on, placing a bucket on my head, beating it with a spoon, not looking at any of their bona fides, and paid them cash in hand, I could have done that. That would have been the grey economy, wouldn't it?
hmm
So if I'm not going to follow the rules, whether they've got a digital ID card or not, won't make any difference at all. If I'm currently paying somebody to be a fast food delivery driver, cash in hand, what's the digital ID going to do for me?
And that's. I mean, that's before I get to kind of my thoughts on it. I'll just share the thoughts that we had from Beer Lover on YouTube, who says, "Well, what are the fears and why? Why is it all about fear? We have memberships for everything else. Um, so what is the issue with one more? That's their thought. So I mean there's a fair point there, because let's be honest, Tesco probably knows, or Ocado, or whoever your chosen retailer is of choice. They all have membership cards or whatever. We're not having to waive it in order to enter the building, but you are being encouraged to use
Yeah,
it every time you kind of shop with them. So there is kind of the argument of, look, everyone else has a way of tracking you. Google has a way of tracking you. They know everything, every damn thing that you've kind of looked at, and so does your phone. I think for me, the difference here is kind of twofold. On one hand, I'm quite agree with the comment, in the sense of, how is this massively any different to what my Tesco Club card or my Morrison's card, other retailers are available. They don't sponsor us, but if they want to shove us money, they're quite welcome to try. And so I kind of get that, but on the other hand, the government have a completely disastrous record of controlling, retaining, and updating data.
Yep.
And the people that it is supposedly aimed to stop or to catch already have a mechanism they should be following. I can't see how they're more likely to follow this than they are to follow the existing requirements of checking someone's passport, someone's right to work, and that they have an NI number before you employ them. To me, there's an idea, but the use case hasn't been thought out, and the thing that it is being sold as a solution to, I think they're the last people that it's going to bloody affect in any way, shape, or form, unless you start getting to a point where, if it's, I mean, the people from the government that went onto the various political shows and were interviewed about it, so well, they weren't going so far as saying that you were being forced to make sure you have it on you at all times. Although if it's digital, essentially, I guess it will be on your phone, which you could then start getting, look, if I've got an app from the government on my phone and my phone knows where I am at all times, how can I trust that the government doesn't then know where I am at all times? Which I don't necessarily want the government to know where I am at all times. And I'm waiting for the people to start shouting at. It doesn't matter if you've got nothing to hide.
What have you got to hide? Eh?
It's that wrong and that leftist woke narrative again. So I honestly can see both sides on this. There you go, typical Lib Dem. I can see both sides on this, but I don't agree with being forced to carry something that identifies myself. I should be able to walk around and conduct my business without being required to show ID, or being required to produce ID for any official or even for the police, unless I am being suspected of doing some sort of crime. And in which case, yes, I absolutely have to. It should be identifying myself. But how many criminals? Oh, you've got me, Gov. Here's my club card. No, I can't see it.
And I think I'm, again, we've discussed the kind of libertarian authoritarian axis, and I'm in a position because I'm a good, fine, upstanding citizen. I'd quite happily be chipped. It wouldn't worry me at all. But there's an element of, I know when I say that, people say, "You are taking you." No, I know I'd be absolutely fine if I had something where I didn't have to remember my phone and I had a digital way of that would cover everything: passport, driving license, national insurance, health details, health data. Again, if I collapse in the street, somebody can scan my arm and it will tell them everything they need to know about me, and they can treat me effectively. I think it would, that for me would all be rather splendid. But that's not what's on offer. What we've got is a half-assed, ill-considered solution to a problem where a solution already exists and isn't being used. And I guess, to answer Beer Lover's point, am I worried about it? No. I mean, the irony that so many people have got angry about Big Brother watching you whilst discussing the issue on Facebook, it made me laugh, in terms of, if anyone knows anything about you and you've told them, then well, it's my free will to do that. So yeah, I think there is this piece where, if it was a cohesive argument, it was one solution to multiple problems, and we could trust the government for it not to run over budget, not to be a shambolic mess. And if we look at track and trace, that probably cost a few more quid than it should have done and didn't go especially well. I think people would be more inclined to go for it. But at the moment, I think if you put everything together, and I know I joked at the start, but this one seems to have come from nowhere, caused massive offence, and do you know what, Simon? I just don't think this one's going to fly. I think this will fade away quietly. and we'll move on to the too difficult to do pile.
See, we were saying that hopefully about LGR.
Yeah, I mean LGR is yeah, I think with that they were always committed to it, and to be fair, it's that element of the devolution thing might happen, and you've got to remember, as I say, we're heading towards 2029 at pace, and yeah, we'll if they're not looking to make the change till 28, who knows? But no, digital ID cards for me, Simon.
So yay or nay? I'm quite intrigued because I'm getting mixed messages here.
Well, for me, I'd happily carry one if I knew why I was doing it. And there's a piece for me where even somebody like myself who doesn't have the civil liberty concerns that
Mhm.
that a lot of people have, you haven't convinced me what it's going to do for me. That I know my national insurance number by heart. My passport's about to expire because I haven't travelled anywhere for a while. For some reason, the bloody wokerati won't let me have a driving license. So that's
That's against your human rights. That is.
it is against my human rights. So
You should definitely be allowed to have a driving license.
or at least Millsy, my guide dog, should have a driving license. They're just oppressing him because he hasn't got opposable thumbs, which makes changing gear very difficult. So
Well, I mean, you
so
could
yeah,
dramatic. I guess that would kind of
yeah, that would help
get
with that.
that
But,
would get away from that one. I'm sure Elon's got a solution to it, but I get kind of the argument about some of the health kind of things regarding identity, but if you're incapacitated, you're not going to unlock your phone.
that's why you should be chipped, Simon. Just be scanned. Ding.
So in a weird way, what you're suggesting is to some degree worse, but more practical than what they're suggesting.
In a terrifying twist of logic, my much more Orwellian solution, it is that if what are you trying to do? Well, you're trying
You can
to
see it now.
identify the
Local
person.
podcaster in favour of chipping people. Okay.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
and to be fair, well, I must be. It must be. I've got my flu shot on Friday, so it'll be another chance for our lizard overlords to inject a vaccine into me to
Well, hopefully
continue to.
that'll improve your broadband as well. So the
Well, my
5G.
broadband, no, all of that. So if we leave that behind, I guess final national issue for us.
Mhm.
I don't think it would be appropriate, and our tone is usually quite light-hearted. Obviously, the dreadful incidents in Manchester on Thursday and the death of two Jewish worshippers on
Mhm.
Yom Kippur, absolute tragedy, and then I guess it's what followed that with obviously there were protests planned in Manchester and London,
Mm.
pro-Palestine action, which is now what's the word I'm looking for?
Prescribed
A
organisation.
prescribed organisation. Should they have gone ahead?
To me, I can see the argument that some people made about them going ahead, but to me, I think the sensible and the compassionate thing to have done would have been not to go. And others will quite vehemently make a case of why they should still go ahead, because you shouldn't be conflating what those protests are against versus against kind of against essentially the murder of two Jews because they're Jews, which is a horrific act, and people should be free to live their lives in peace without being intimidated, without being murdered, and they should be free to kind of do that. So I don't know. To me, I would have thought actually the terribly British solution would be, oh, actually, we're just not going to go. We're just not going to do it because actually, it's not going to make anything any better right now to actually hold that. And the protest is still going to have the same effect if you have it the next Saturday, isn't it?
Yeah,
So to me, I don't think that. I think the police were right not to ban it because I think that they were in an impossible situation. But on the other hand, I think maybe the organisers and the people going should have made, and they obviously made a personal decision that wasn't the same as mine, and I was never going to be going on it, so I'm not of the
yeah.
constituency that they would be seeking to kind of engage with. But Yeah,
It's a
at the
difficult
end of
one,
the
isn't
day,
it? Because it's about decency, isn't it? And
hmm
I think you're
yeah,
right that the police are always in an impossible position. And I
yeah,
heard the Home Secretary this morning saying that the government's going to look at the law about repeated protests, and you know, again, it was very vague what they're going to look at and what they mean by that. Um, but again, it was about giving more powers to the police. And I just think that's quite a cowardly act, because there is that element where, effectively, if I look at Saturday, the police were very clear that they did not want to, you know, th- those protests were, going to be 1,000 people who were going to come out in support of a prescribed organisation and effectively throw down the gauntlet to the police that says, I'm here, I'm supporting a prescribed organisation, arrest me. And the police made it very clear that they felt that their officers would have been much better served providing support around synagogues and Jewish places of worship to make that community feel more secure. And I guess the bit I struggle with is I go further. I think the people that attended those demonstrations, I think they're a disgrace. I think they have to take a long, hard look at themselves, because for me that was completely inappropriate. I think for me it's fundamentally about decency, and it is a piece where asking the police to effectively make that choice. Do you go and police the Palestine or the Palestinian Action civil disobedience, or do you go and protect the Jewish community? I don't think that's fair to put into the laps of serving police officers and get them to make a choice. Because I think the one thing we can guarantee, and we would agree with Simon, is that whatever choice they make, they would be accused of being bigoted and biased and
Yeah,
political in that choice.
they're in an impossible situation. I just think holding a protest in this. So there was a protest in Manchester as well. Is that
There
right?
was, there was.
I think to hold a protest that you knew was going to basically cause upset, even if actually they weren't, even if the parties, even if the victims on Thursday would, if that was a different situation, I still think to hold that in the same city, you need to give your head a wobble.
Yeah, yeah,
If I'm kind of really honest, there will be people making an argument about why the process should go ahead, and actually, in a free society, people don't have the right to not be offended or to not experience things they don't agree with. I get that, but at the same time, there's also an expectation that people have a bit of a sense of decency, to use your own word,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
about it themselves. People
Uh,
have a right to live their lives in peace,
Yep,
and they shouldn't be intimidated. And people, on whatever the march is, if there are people on that march that are doing or saying or demonstrating things that are illegal, and we know that, and that, and I think there are accusations of that in pretty much every protest march,
correct.
then that should be being dealt with. The problem is that faced with a large mass of people, the police just do not have the resources, and it wouldn't be safe. I mean, it wouldn't be safe to do it even if they had the resources, I don't think, to
No,
tackle those people and to kind of, because at the end of the day, those are the people that are. I don't think it's as simple as ruining it for everybody else, but those are the ones that are trying to clothe unreasonableness in a crowd of reasonableness,
well, and I
that
think
that's the problem.
we've seen this, haven't we, in all of the protests that we've seen
Yes,
over the summer,
yes,
which is that the people that stand outside asylum hotels shouting abuse, there will be people in there who are violent racists. There will be people in there who are concerned citizens who feel their voice isn't being heard and are going to those things because they fear that there is a genuine issue. In
hmm
the same way that the pro-Palestinian action, there will be people in there who are anti-Semitic. There will be people in there who who would see the destruction of Israel and all of the Jewish diaspora. And there are going to be people who are so upset at the plight of the Palestinian people that they feel that that is the only right thing to do. So I think there is always this challenge amongst any kind of protest, that you are going to have people who are, perhaps have the right motives, and there will be people in there with the wrong motives. The ability to sort the wheat from the chaff and to do that is almost impossible,
Mm.
particularly when we look at the way in which protests are policed. I grew up in the mid 80s, and the way that protests were policed in the mid 80s is a lot of very big coppers with sticks, hats, and riot shields would strike the protesters until they stopped protesting. And nobody sees us going back to return to that. So I do think the police are in an impossible position, and you could have 1,000 police or 10,000 police, but if somebody is laying on the ground or sitting on the ground is acting in a civilly disobedient way, um, they're very, very difficult to move if they're not willing to move. So
No,
your options in terms of dispersing or even arresting 1,000 people, it is not something that you can do if you've got infinite amounts of police resource. So I look at what's gone on this week, and I think, for me, that the real worry about it is the joining of the dots. And for me, it is that piece of, and we've touched on it here, we don't go too deep on it often, but it's that if a group, a small minority, starts to get demonized and starts to get labeled as quote unquote the problem, then unfortunately there will be unhinged people who will believe that taking that violent, murderous response is justified. And I think the more that demonization of small groups, be that the left or the right, the more that is allowed to flourish, unfortunately, the more of these acts we will see. And I do think that the government is powerless, and I don't use that word lightly, because if they do nothing, they're accused of letting hate flourish. And if they quote unquote crack down, then free speech is dead. And irrespective of what colour your government is, I'm not certain they can win on this one.
Well, I mean, you can't please all of the people all of the time, but we have laws about racial hatred or about hate crimes. We have laws about inciting violence. We already have laws to deal with that. I think there's just a practical realization of, if there are, and I'm just going to pluck some numbers out of the thin air, if there are 5 people in the middle of a crowd of 1,000 people who happen to be saying anti-Semitic things, or
Yep.
are saying or are inciting hatred, or are blaming all Jews for the actions of the Israeli government, there are laws to deal with those people and those statements. But the practicality of trying to extract those 5 people from the middle of a crowd of 1,000, obviously I'm plucking the numbers out there. Even if you look at the decision of do you enforce the law, or can you enforce the law or not, there are 2 separate things. There's a law to enforce. Can you reasonably and safely enforce it at this point? How many officers would it take you to go into the middle of that crowd and get those people out and arrest them, secure them, make sure they're safe, and then remove them so that they can be processed and charged? How many officers would it take to do that, and would it be safe for them to do that? I think the police are in an impossible situation, and to some degree are being asked to do the impossible by the government. And I'd also have sympathy for the government in the sense that they are in an impossible situation, because whichever way they cut it, they are not going to please everybody, because unfortunately, currently, our society, or some people, have done a very good job of dividing us against each other.
Yep.
And convincing us of making enemies of each other, and and highlighting all of the things that we disagree on instead of the things that we agree on. Which is kind of the hope that we should all have, and the sense of, and this again was another comment that we'd had from Beer Lover, was about, against the empathy, the understanding, the sympathy. Those are the sorts of, there's been a lot of talk about it's not British values. Well, those are the sorts of values that I understand to be British values. Other people will have different definitions as to what those are, and maybe that is the underlying conflict that's going on. But fundamentally, I don't care who you are, what where you're from, what your race is, what language you speak, what religion you support. At the end of the day, you have as much freedom to live your life in peace as the next person. And as long as we all can agree on that, then we're fine. Unfortunately, it would seem that there are people that don't.
And I think that's fundamentally, kind of, without wishing to make us sound too noble, it's why we're here. It's why, despite the fact that our personal politics have never aligned and will never align, we've been able for 6.5 years to kick almost every subject about and talk about it and explain it from different angles and give perspectives. And well, let's hope more people will stop trying to get their point heard and maybe listen to what the other side's got to say. So you've been listening to the Pompey Politics Podcast. I've been Ian Tiny Morris.
And I've been Simon Sainsbury. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Join us next week at 6:27 live on Facebook, YouTube and LinkedIn, where we will be having a bit of a roundup of the conference season for the political parties in the UK. So that's Reform, Liberal Democrats, Labour, the Conservatives and the Greens. So we'll be talking about those and asking what are conferences for, and do they actually change anything, and does anyone pay any attention to them? And then after that, on the 19th, of course, will be our hustings for the Paulsgrove by-election. So that's on the 19th of October. And then the week after that, we'll be speaking to people from British voters overseas. So we'll be interested to hear from those who are still eligible to vote in UK elections, but no longer live in the UK, and what democratic challenges and representation problems they may face. So it'd be lovely to hear from them. So if you want to make sure that you're kept up to date, please do like, follow, subscribe to us on YouTube, sign up to the newsletter, etc., etc. But we shall see you next time. So thanks very much. Don't forget to like, follow and comment on Facebook, or comment and subscribe on YouTube. Find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook, X, YouTube, Threads, LinkedIn.